This episode of the Restoration Today podcast is brought to you by Surety. Surety is the third-party fund control company founded by those who understand the entire restoration industry, especially the paying contractor's experience just trying to get paid. Surety establishes payment rails from insurance carriers to restoration contractors, protecting property owners and every party from risk using 3D geospatial scan technology. If you want to reduce your debt, free up your admin staff, and improve the experience of your clients, book a demo with Surety today. Hello there. Thanks for checking out another episode of the Restoration Today podcast. Today, I am excited to have Mike Fulton back on. He is the president of property estimating at Verisk. This is the third time he and I have gotten to chat on my podcast. I'm very excited to have him back. We're trying to kind of keep the industry updated on trends with Xactimate and Verisk and pricing and all of the things that are going on. So Mike, welcome back. Thank you very much for spending some time with me today. So for those of you who have not met you or heard from you, introduce yourself and share a little bit about your background in the restoration industry specifically.
Oh, thanks. Well, good to see you, Michelle. It's always a pleasure to be here. And like the third time, don't know if it's the charm or if it's three strikes or what, but just
the
glad
charm,
to be
for sure.
Mike Fulton, I'm an industry guy, got my start as a general contractor, used to build homes, used to restore homes back in the Atlanta area in the Southeast. For years, have been with Xactware. This is my 30th year with Xactware. So I'm on the technology side, although I like keeping my hands and my mental state in within the industry itself. I'm a strategist. My job is to, rather than actually saving the world one home at a time, putting homes back together, is to think of what the industry needs several years out and try and build those things to help the people that are doing that today.
Yep.
Put things back together. It's been an interesting road. I've served many roles in my position here, and there's an interesting story about how I got here. I won't get into that, but spent most of my tenure within the organization leading the team that does the research and the analysis of building cost data and publishing that building cost data out into the industry. So helped to develop that team and the methodology that has become so successful today, and kind of being, for lack of a better term, kind of the standard by which everybody operates on from a building cost side. But just glad to be here and just appreciate the opportunity to talk with you.
I always enjoy chatting. So this is wonderful. So what are some of the big trends you're seeing in the industry right now? What's really affecting restorers and contractors right now?
Well, the big thing that's affecting everybody, and even though the government claims it's slowed down a little bit, is just inflation and staying abreast of that. And how do you write an estimate today when you know that you may not begin work on that property or may not get to a certain phase on that property for 30 days, 45 days, 60 days out, and guarantee those prices? Those are challenges that the industry has in general. And it's not just on the labor side, but the lead time on materials as well. I've got friends that are building homes here in this particular area, and I mean, cabinets are 4 to 5 months out, windows are 10 months out. It's just incredible the amount of time it takes to get some of those things in. But I think those are in general are always the things that affect restorers. Price is what puts food on the table. And allows you to pay your bills and make payroll. And so that's something that's very keen to us, something that we do our best to stay abreast of. There's still a broad range of prices out there in the marketplace, believe it or not. Roofing is kind of the king in that space, as everybody knows. But I would say that in general is the key. Technology that restorers are seeing continue to progress will always be at the forefront or just below that forefront from a pricing perspective. How can we help them and reduce the amount of time that they have to take in the creation of an estimate, in the auditing of an estimate to make sure that it meets the guidelines that this particular insurer wants versus another insurer wants, so that they can get on to doing what they do best, which is actually restoring the home. So can we assist them in that upfront process and the writing of an estimate so that it's accurate for them? And accuracy, as we've said, is a relative thing. It's what is accurate for the restorer, what's accurate for the policyholder, and for the particular job in question. So what's accurate from that perspective, and how can we do so in the most effective way?
So what should it look like on the property claim side if there is a loss and maybe an Xactimate estimate is written, it's approved maybe by the adjuster and everything, but hey, materials are delayed. Hey, the project's delayed. Then what needs to happen in those projects when it's like, well, now the prices are so different from what they were when we initially figured all this out?
Yeah, this is a shift that's got to happen in the industry. And, the insurance, the policy contract typically in some way, or shape or form either implies or physically states that we owe you for repair or replacement of this thing based upon the time of the loss. And if the time of the loss was January 2022 and you're not affecting the repair until April, let alone something like June, the price is quite different. And so that's one of the challenges that we see. I know Greg Pine, who's our VP of Pricing Data Services here, one of the top questions he has when it comes to questions that come in from the field about the prices not working is simply because they're using a price from January and today's June. And that's something that we don't have control over, but it's something that realistically, that it's known that this is an issue, that we've got to address it as an industry, but it is an industry issue and something we've got to deal with. But that's key.
Okay, so staying on the pricing track here, how's your pricing analyst program going? We've been talking about that for a while. So how's that going so far?
Yeah, really well. I think there's more interest in it than we've got room to put people into right now. I think we've got 100 plus that have gone through that. The key of that pricing analyst program, and we may have to actually expand it, but the initial concept of it was how can greater data, greater amounts of greater quantities of data, greater qualities of data coming into our system only improves that which we do significantly. So how can we effectively take what is our team of 60 or 70 people that are doing this on a day-to-day basis and expand that significantly out into the field? How can we get more eyes and ears out in the field? And the number one key of doing that is getting people trained. How do you communicate with us? How do we put things together? What's the most appropriate way to send us information so that we can act on it quickly and so that we can minimize the amount of, I guess, independent verification that we have to do. Here's the issue. I mean, prior to the pricing certification course, someone calls up and says, Mike, Greg, Michelle, there is a problem with the drywall price in this particular market. You're publishing $2 a square foot and it needs to be $2.50 a square foot. Our response at that time was, sounds great. We've got to independently verify that. So we'll actually call a number of drywallers in the market so that we can verify that. And ideally, when that person calls into us, they would give us the name and number of several subs that they could reference us to, that we could get that information to try and expedite it. What this process does, or is intended to do, is take that up a notch, where we now have a professional whom we're on a first name basis with, they're on a first name basis with us. They've been certified to the fact they've agreed to a set of a code of ethics with our program to provide us with only certified information from their perspective.
Yep.
They can not only just call us and give us that information, but they can provide us the background material for that so that we can almost literally flip the switch and make that change, because they have done the legwork for us. And that's going to be key. It's we used to call it the golden restorer or the golden contractor rule. Who are the people that we can really trust to get the straight scoop from in that particular market? And I don't know what the total number really needs to be for those. I mean, I initially thought 2 to 3, 4 to 5 maybe within each given general market, but we're publishing in 476 markets. So do the math. We could have a couple thousand in that particular category. So not anywhere near that yet, but there is a significant interest proven out by just the fact that we're in a rapidly inflating market, and prices are key, and people want to participate. They want to be involved. They want to have a say. They want to know that their voice is heard. And this is just an opportunity for us to open that up to them.
Okay. All right. So talk a little bit about the online price list editor. You talked about that the last time we spoke earlier this year as well. So how's that going, and what is that all about for people that aren't familiar?
So years ago, those that have been with us and been on the Xactimate platform for a number of years know that within Xactimate itself, historically, there has been a way to open up a price list, make modifications to it, copy it, duplicate it, et cetera, make it your own. And do those type of things, or create one from scratch. And that tended to move away. And what we wanted to do is create a tool that mimicked that for the most part, but put it in an online state so that literally you or I or anybody that's a user of the application could go online. They can pull in one of Xactware's price lists. They can save it as Mike Fulton construction. They can make modifications to it. They can publish it to their users if they want to. And it's actually got some really cool tools as a part of that publication perspective, so that let's say that I am covering all of northern Georgia in my particular territory. I may want to use similar material rates amongst the 3 or 4 markets that I'm leveraging, or similar labor rates, or only similar labor rates in certain trades, et cetera. You have the ability within that online price list editor to define that level of detail and use things back and forth. So you can set a general market, say these are the labor rates I want to use, and then here are the exceptions within that market. It takes a little bit of training, but it's actually, once you get into it and start using it, it's really quite cool. And so I would just encourage people, especially those that, and we know the challenge, insurers, it's not uncommon to request or ask that you use the Xactware published price. But for non-program work, you may have the latitude, and ideally will have the latitude to use some of your own pricing. From our perspective, it's fine. We encourage you to do that. Everybody knows that we always have, and as part of our documentation. But I think it's a really cool tool that allows people to facilitate that.
How do you see technology changing the estimating game, I guess, in the industry right now? There are so many new platforms out there. I remember when Matterport was the big thing, right? And DocuSketch, and now we have Hover and so many others that are also changing how estimating is being done, and how adjusters are looking at things, and how estimators need to be involved. So what's kind of your viewpoint on the future of estimating and what it will look like to get accurate pricing and accurate scopes of work?
It's the visual intelligence is going to be the key. So can we take from an image or a set of images or from a video and identify the thing that is there? Meaning, is it drywall? Is it 5 1/4 inch baseboard? Number one, and then is it damaged, and the type of damage that has been done to it? And from that, you can actually put in an application rule to create an estimate for it. Now, that doesn't necessarily take the professional estimator out of the plan, because if I look at a roof and say that's a 30-year laminated shingle on it, I don't know how many layers of shingles there potentially are under that. I don't know what potential damage I might find when I start pulling those shingles off. So at some point, you got to have somebody climb up on the roof, not just to affect the repair, but actually see what kind of damage there really is. But what we're trying to do is jumpstart that. And so, with Hover doing it from ground imagery, from drone imagery, you've got Loveland that's doing it from drone imagery, Eagle View that's doing it from strictly aerial imagery. I think those are key players. The interior folks that are doing it, DocuSketch, Matterport, Planner is another. We're doing those types of things as well. But the technology that is on the mobile devices these days is just incredible. And so why not leverage it to do some of those things? The one that we've recently put in play, and the new LiDAR technology that's available, I believe, on the 12 Plus iPhone, you can literally go in and diagram a home in a tenth. I mean, easily a tenth of the time, if not even greater than it used to be from the old days of putting your laptop in the middle of the room and stretching out a tape measure and trying to draw that thing. It's literally just going around, picking it, selecting the door, going into the next room, identifying that same door so that you've got the connecting point, and it'll start stitching all of those rooms together. It's really, really quite cool. The next step to that is identifying the material that's in the room. So I think from a restorer's perspective, the things that we can offer up to give you a jump start. Now, ideally, we'd be able to give you that jump start before you even leave the office and get out on site. And those are the things that we're trying to do. Insurers are trying to do that as well. Can we incent the policyholder to capture those types of things about their home at the time at which they're binding coverage, so that you effectively have a claim ready home? Can you leverage that, and the technology allows you to go through and identify all of your personal property at a high level? I mean, you can't get down and you can't yet identify whether that 70-inch LED TV is a Sony or a Vizio television. But if you're packing out and cleaning it and storing it, there's not really a great difference in price in that. But if you're replacing it, quite a big difference. But that's the direction that the industry is progressing. The other piece that I think that is on top of that is once that estimate is written, is the application of a set of rules to help the restorer move that estimate along and get approval much more quickly. So what we're building today is a rule set with some help with some industry partners that are out there, and they know who they are, to develop a standard set of construction industry rules that will apply to your Xactimate price list. Now, Xactware has historically done this. We used to call them scoping and overlap rules. So it said, you know, if I'm removing and replacing the door, I don't need to actually remove and replace the lock set as well, because the remove portion or activity of that lock set is taken care of when I remove the door. So those are pretty basic. Did I paint more ceiling than there is actually ceiling in this room? Things of that nature. But there's a number of other construction specific types of rules, such as if I'm in Southern Cal, do I need to put specific types of strapping to make the earthquake codes more effective? If I'm in South Florida, do I need to use a certain type of roll roofing or a certain type of weight of felt underneath the roof and a certain number of nails per shingle that I might not have to use otherwise? Where do I use drip edge versus not? Things of that nature. There's literally thousands of rules that we can fire in an instant on an estimate and provide you with that detail, provide your estimator with that detail, so that before they return that estimate to your office, if you're qualifying it, or return it to the carrier, it's been qualified. On top of that, insurers have their own rules, their own standard operating guidelines that they require for how they like their estimates to be formatted, and certain guidelines that they like to use. The insurers will be able to apply those rule sets on top of it. The restorer will be able to apply their own rule sets on top of it. So if the insurer says you need to do this within X amount of time, I can dial that down and make sure I'm actually beating that SLA. These are the things that are going to be critical for the industry, and that are just, you know, things that took a lot of manual work to do historically in the past that we can automate and put those things in place. So again, to assist in the estimating process and to assist in applying those rules that will help you qualify that estimate. Exact scope, the other one, which is specifically water mitigation to start with, and then moving on to interior and exterior estimation, is can we literally, and yes, we are literally allowing you to estimate within Sketch by dragging and dropping, you know, drying equipment, air movers, et cetera, dehues, and so on, putting up containment barriers that automatically do the estimate, and then applying those IICRC guidelines to the estimate for you.
Okay, so talking about all this technology, how does Xactware Verisk determine who? I know you've talked about in the past trying to be open to integration and wanting more technology to work together, so restorers don't need to have 20 different platforms or 20 different things that aren't talking to each other, right? So how do you determine what technology will work with Xactware, and how to bring what to bring into the ecosystem and what not to bring in?
Sure. Well, there's always things that plug well or bolt into that which we're doing today, and the things we're interested in. So we have inbound requests from people who want to integrate with us. We have outbound research and exploration that we're doing to try and find those with whom we want to integrate. And the latter part, the ones that we're typically exploring, are the things that fit in well and bolt on to that which we do, and don't necessarily compete with something that we do.
Sure.
We get a lot of inbound requests from technologies that compete with us, and that's fine. Sometimes those that have come on board and with whom we've integrated, we actually end up growing into a competing position with them as we expand our services, or they end up growing into a competing position with us as they expand our services. But literally, we're all about customer choice. And, you know, we ideally, as a business, we want to operate and be the most effective, most efficient, provide you with the best solutions at the best price. That's on us. But we also have a platform upon which the majority of the property insurance industry in the United States and Canada operate. And we realize that that is a highway upon which everybody drives. And we want to make sure that everybody has access to that highway. Right now, there's, you know, the way we've got it structured, we have to really build out our API strategy. And that's one of our biggest initiatives. And the API strategy, application programming interface, just allows things to connect much more quickly using standards that you can turn on and off with a switch. Right now, there's a fair amount of work and support that goes into those integrations. and therefore it takes a little bit of time, and therefore we're a little bit more selective with who we let into that boat, so to speak, because of that. The other piece is that because we have the platform upon which the property claims industry operates, we've got a lot of data from insurers who really put a responsibility upon us to be good stewards of that data. You've got to be very cautious. Cyber liability is something that's incredible. Now, most of what you get in a property claim is not that sensitive of information. We're not getting credit card information. We're not getting social security numbers, anything like that. I mean, when you think of name, address, telephone number,
you can Google that.
You can Google it. You used to be able to go to the white pages, but people get upset when that stuff is shared. So it's still classified as sensitive. And so we have to protect it as such. So because of that, we have to make sure that those who come on with us have certain limits of cyber liability and meet certain data security requirements. We have had in some cases, especially with some insurtechs that are really solid and ones that we believe have a real positive potential impact in the industry, we can work with them to ramp those things up over time. Because if somebody doesn't have it's hard for a company that has very little income today to afford a $10 million plus cyber liability policy. Sure. So we got to work through those issues. There's a chicken and the egg concept we have to work through, but we're willing to do that. But in general, we call it an ecosystem. The ecosystem is open. That's been the big mantra that we've been pushing in our Elevate conference and in all of our documentation and in our trade shows. And we want people to feel like we are open. We're trying to apply a certain set of rules about when we should versus not, but typically those are on the technical side and on the ability for them to maintain certain levels of security with the data. And as long as everybody agrees, meaning the insurer agrees that this is somebody that they want on the ecosystem, and the contractor agrees this is an insurtech that they want on the ecosystem, then it's a pretty easy decision.
Okay. So I see a lot of conversations in the industry and even at some industry events talking about the difference between Symbility and Xactimate on their price lists. And there is some variety, right? So from the Xactware side, talk about your pricing methodology, how you use data to come up with your price lists, where all of that is coming from. You don't need to speak to the Symbility side, of course, but how are your price lists created?
So it's in general, it's the same way that if I'm Mike Fulton Construction and I'm out in the market serving Northern Utah, how would I develop a pricing structure that would enable me to go out and write estimates in an efficient manner? I don't want to, if I've got any kind of a size of business, I don't want to go out on site and meet with Michelle at her home and say, well, let me get my plumber out here next week and my electrician here in a couple of days and my siding guy to take a look at it. Next thing you know, it's 3 weeks before you get an estimate. I've got to develop some kind of pricing information that would enable me to go out and expedite an estimate. And the way I would do that is based upon prices that I would get from my plumber and from my electrician and my siding guy and my drywall guy, either by contacting them on a regular basis or using recent prior jobs that they've done for me to develop that as a starting point. And so the way I would do that as a business operator, a small business operator, is maintain it in a list. And I would keep that up to date by making calls to my material suppliers and getting information where I can, understanding what my labor market is, understanding the amount of time it takes a person to install that 7/16 sheet of OSB on a vertical wall versus a gable end versus a roof deck or something like that, and being able to pull all of that together. So understanding my cost to do a thing if I'm doing it internally, understanding my cost to pay for a thing if I'm subbing it out, and then comparing those two and using an aggregate price. Now, if I'm in the business and I'm doing that for my own business in a particular market, I'm generally not going to pick the highest price that I'm going to go out and put in front of my potential customers, nor am I going to pick the lowest price. I'm going to pick something that I'm familiar with working with, and that's probably more middle of the road. How can I get the best bang for my buck? How can I get the best quality service? How can I get the best sub for the best price? The people that I can count on. And that's literally what we do although in a very scaled fashion. So, we're collecting estimates to the tune of millions per year. We're making phone calls to suppliers that don't have electronic data that they feed to us, and there's a few of them that do that. We're making phone calls to contractors in the market to the tune of about 300,000+ per year. And it's just trying to get that information in, aggregating it, and then having our systems churn through it and say, for this group of zip codes, here is the aggregate price that we're going to publish for drywall, for baseboard, for roofing, et cetera, versus this group of zip codes. That's one thing that we'll do. And then the other thing that we would do, same thing that I would do if working in a market, is what are the differences in the market that I'm trying to serve? So I'm in northern Utah today. Is there really realistically a price difference between the Provo area versus the Salt Lake area? Certainly with the Park City area, there's certainly a price difference there, but trying to maintain those things and where do those boundaries meet so that we can make sure that we're being appropriate for each one of those markets. So in general, the way I describe it to people is the same thing that you would do on a much larger scale. Mm-hmm. And accuracy is relative, as we've discussed. The same way, if I'm marching out to Michelle's home to do an estimate, I'm going to look at what are the specifics of this job. If you live in a penthouse in Midtown versus up on a mountainside estate, those are all things I have to deal with to get the material there and to get the people there to make that happen. But all of those things have to be taken into account and rightfully should be taken into account from an adjustment perspective when you're writing an estimate. So that's in general what we do. Really take a hard look at things. We've been doing this for 30+ years. And we've got roughly 17,000 line items in 476 markets that we're publishing on a monthly basis. So you do the math. That is a lot of information. Are we always correct? Absolutely not. But it's best efforts, and I think having the certification program out in the field, I think, is going to be key to helping us making that even more appropriate.
For contractors that are submitting pricing feedback, I feel like this is an old discussion now, right? We've been talking about submitting feedback for years. It's not a new concept at this point, but for people who are maybe just kind of getting into it, what should their expectation be of, okay, I submitted feedback. Should I get an email back? Should I expect to see changes? Like, what should contractors expect when they're submitting feedback?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a couple ways to do it. Let's just review that. And we always do talk about it, but you can't talk about it enough. But so if it's program work, let's qualify that. You get an assignment from a carrier to go write an estimate at Mike's house. As soon as you click complete and upload that estimate to the system, that's feedback that we look at. If you're going out and writing estimates on non-program work, so non-assignments that come through, you want to submit that because that might be using your own pricing information that's not specifically Xactware pricing. And you want to get that up into the network so that it can make a change. The way you do that is you have to mark that estimate as complete. That is the thing that tells Xactimate to trigger that for upload the next time you connect. So mark estimates complete all the time. That way we're getting that feedback. The other ways is certainly via our online tool or to pick up the phone or send an email at pricing@xactware.com. Obviously, if you're making a phone call, you're getting a response because you're getting a live body on the other end of the phone that and you're talking to somebody that's actually put on a tool belt and done framing, done finished carpentry, done drywall, things of that nature. If you're sending in an email, you should absolutely expect a response. You should expect an initial response with perhaps some follow-up questions, and then ideally a follow-up response with regard to the results of what your feedback has offered. And I will say that last piece doesn't always happen as well as it should. Okay. Because there's a number of this that's coming in and it just has to be tracked and we have to respond to it. But in general, the process is once I send something in via email and it says, please look at the drywall price in this particular market, believe it or not, we still get a lot of those emails that don't tell us really whether you're talking about Columbus, Ohio, or San Diego, California, or who you are, what company you're with, anything like that. So you have to understand, the more information you can provide to us, the more appropriately we're going to be able to respond, and the more quickly we'll be able to respond to you. So please provide us with some information. Some have got this down pat, or they'll say, Greg, and I'm referring to Greg Pine, who leads up that team, or any one of his analysts. This is Michelle Blevins. I'm in this particular market. I need you to look into this price for this specific item code. Here's where I'm having a challenge with it. I'm having a challenge in these situations. And here are some drywall subs that I use with whom you can verify that price. And then we can jump on that really quickly and provide you with not just an initial response, but something ideally later on that shows you what the results of those are.
Perfect.
So it's key. It's key for us. The feedback is key. I've always said, the restorers are our eyes and ears in the field, but we need you to communicate with us in the most effective way so that we can act upon it. And again, that pricing certification course and that pool of golden contractors that we're going to have into that list is going to be tremendous for us.
Where do people find out more about the pricing certification course? And is it being offered everywhere across the country?
I think it is. Send an email to pricing@xactware.com. You should be able to find it. I mean, we've just switched over the xactware.com website over to verisk.com, and it's not always as easy to find the things there that you used to be able to find. And those are some things that the team back in the home office are taking care of. But I believe you're able to find something out about it on the website at some point, but just pick up the phone and give us a call. If you dial into our 800 number, I think you can press option 3 or 4 to connect to the pricing team and talk to them about it, or send an email to pricing@xactware.com. They'll get you on the list, queue you up to show you when the next certification courses are. It's not for everybody. I mean, we want the best of the best, not to saying that we don't have anything but that in the field, but we want the folks that are really going to understand what the market is doing in their particular area beyond their own company. Everybody knows what their own costs are, but you need people who really understand what's happening in the market surrounding them so that they can act literally as one of our team in the field.
Yep. So what trends are you seeing as far as how the industry is going so far this year? We've kind of been light on big weather events. We've had some localized things here and there, but so far it's been a quiet hurricane season so far. We still have the hotbed coming maybe, but we hear about wildfires, although I don't know, that's maybe more of just, I hate to say it, like they're just common now and kind of always burning, which is unfortunate, I guess. What are you seeing as far as trends go, especially weather related for the industry this year?
Yeah, the interesting thing, and we've been talking about this the last couple of rounds that we've done, is that especially when you have a storm, there's always the potential and realistic surge that you get in labor costs as a result of the storm. And it's supply and demand, right? Can my supply of labor meet the demand in that particular market? And so if I'm in a depressed construction or restoration market and a storm comes through and causes a lot of damage, I have the supply to meet the demand. I often don't see a great demand surge in pricing relative to labor or material. But in these days, we're in a boom. I mean, new construction, remodeling is in a boom. Everybody that has a hammer and knows how to swing it is working. If you want to work, there's a job for you to be had in the construction and remodeling and restoration industry. So the fear has been, what will happen? I mean, if we have a major hurricane hit the Southeast, is it like you can bring, restorers from Texas and Arkansas and Tennessee and Georgia into Louisiana? Because everybody there is busy as well. Possibly, yes, but the results of that kind of demand surge could be just incredible, something that we haven't seen in many, many, many years. But that being said, it has been a slow year. I mean, this dry weather pattern, I heard someone say a couple of weeks ago that the dry weather pattern in the Atlantic that has been preventing these hurricanes is supposedly going to be ending here within the next week or so. And so I was actually looking at the radar today, and we're starting to see some disturbances come off of Africa, but we just have not seen anything in the Atlantic. There's been, interestingly, a few hurricanes in the Pacific that kind of head out west and don't really do much damage because there's nothing for them to hit. But the floods that have been happening, a lot of people have been impacted by those. I know a lot of our customers have been, having to really mobilized to service those flooded areas in the Midwest. A lot of flooding happening in the Southwest right now, flooding in Texas that we heard in the Dallas-Fort Worth area just over the last couple of days. So a lot of people reacting to those types of things. Mm-hmm. Often the way that flood happens is because it's insured through the NFIP. There are not a lot of assignments that come directly from carriers. Yep. For the flood program. So while our contractor market is out servicing those storms, we may not see that feedback because it's not coming back through as a completed assignment. So again, mark those estimates complete. We'll see them so that we can have that impact on the feedback as it comes back through. But just remains to be seen. I mean, this climate change is real. It is that we are in a significant drought in the West.
Mm-hmm. Yes. All right. So you talked about at the beginning, before we wrap it up, you talked about how you made a career out of looking at data and trends in the industry and kind of seeing what's coming ahead and being able to predict some of those things. So what do you see for the industry kind of as a whole, especially maybe when it comes to technology over the next few years?
Well, we talked about it, but I think the increase in mobile technology or the technology that's available on the handheld and mobile devices is really going to drive what happens in the marketplace. And that's why we've had 2 licenses to Xactimate that we've offered historically. We've had our standard license, which is a single platform license. You could either use desktop or online. And we've had our pro license, which is a multi-platform. You get desktop, you get online, and you get mobile. Because all of this technology that is really going to provide lift to the industry is going into the mobile devices, we want to be able to offer that up to our customers at the best price. So what we've done is we actually this year lowered the price of our pro solution so that if you pay for it for a full year in advance, I think it's like $25 different for the year, or per month different than what you get the standard license. And seeing a lot of people convert to that. But I think that's the direction that the industry is going to go. So remote sensing, remote measuring, object recognition, material identification, things of that nature that are going to happen and help you to expedite that estimate are really what's going to be key going forward. And then as we talked about earlier, the back end, the audits and the rules that we can apply to an estimate to ensure that you're meeting appropriate guidelines for the construction market, for the industry, and for the individual carrier for whom you're doing the work, or for you as a contractor restoring organization. What are the standards that you want to apply to those folks that are out writing estimates on your behalf?
Perfect. Well, Mike, thank you very much. Anything else you want to add? Anything that we didn't touch on? We talked about a lot.
Wow, I should have been taking notes on everything that we did touch on. It is a lot, but there is a lot to talk about. I hope we covered most of what you wanted to go through in this session. I just encourage people, as I encourage you, Michelle, to reach out anytime. I know I was able to get out to quite a few events last year to speak in front of our contractor organizations. This is where my heart is, folks, and really enjoy getting out and just rubbing elbows with folks and talking about what we can do to make the industry better. Appreciate everything that everybody does out there. It's a tough job, and we in the technology business, we have a lot of, not that this is a bad thing, but a lot of younger generation coming into the space, and everybody, my kids are the same way. They all want a career in making the world a better place. And, insurance, restoration and software isn't often thought of as that, but, really everything that we do is designed to get a check into a policyholder's hands more quickly and ideally get them back into their home more quickly. So I like to tell our folks, we're saving the world one home at a time.
One home at a time. Well, Mike, thank you. It's always a pleasure. Thank you for all of your transparency and always being open to these conversations. I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
For more Restoration Today, visit our website, cnrmagazine.com, or find us wherever you get your favorite podcasts.